For those of you who have read the newsletter online, it said that the title of the talk today would be From Doubt to Faith. That sounded really good, but it's incorrect. Today I would like to talk to you about heroes. Partly because yesterday we celebrated the 250th anniversary of the founding of our country, conceived in liberty. Founded at horrific cost, which included 8.5 years of war to birth a new nation. And partly because just a month ago, on June 6th, we remembered the anniversary of D-Day, 1944, the beginning of the battle to liberate Europe from Nazi Germany. World War II was 6 years of intense fighting, which truly affected the entire world. There have been wars on this planet since Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden and their first son, Cain, killed his brother Abel. Wars reshape society and can bring about needed change. But it is hard to look beyond the immense devastation and loss of life, for wars are always costly. War brings out the worst and the best in people. It's easy to see the worst. Sometimes we have to dig for the best. Fred Rogers said that when he was frightened by the news, his mother told him, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping." The helpers, for they are also the heroes. And I would like to tell you 3 stories today of unlikely heroes who emerged through the traumas of war. We do like our heroes. It is one of the most universally recognized archetypes in human behavior. The hero confronts challenges, undergoes transformation, and inspires others through courage, integrity, and sacrifice. We are drawn to stories of heroes, from Homer's Odyssey to Star Wars, from Harry Potter, to the Dalai Lama, from Mahatma Gandhi to Mother Teresa. The hero archetype is alive and well. But let me digress for just a moment. I'm sorry that I'm got a frog in my throat, but he won't leave. My father was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1943 when World War II ended in August of 1945 with Japan's surrender. He had been training for what they thought was going to be the invasion of Japan. Instead, he was a part of the occupying forces. Could somebody get me some water? Thanks, Joe. Oh, thank you. He was a part of the occupying forces there in Japan, leaving behind a wife and 2 small children in Southern California. World War II was my parents' war, and it greatly affected how they saw the world. This worldwide war created major cultural shifts and changed the structures of societies all over the globe. Thank you. I have always equally been aware of how much living through that war affected them, and have been equally fascinated and appalled at the horrors of that war. So in 2002, I was able to visit the D-Day beaches of Normandy, France with my husband, Jim. We traveled to England, where we met up with our friend Norman Brooks, who had flown Spitfires during the early part of World War II. And he used to say, when I was a slimmer chap. If any of you have seen pictures of the cockpit of a Spitfire, it's about this big. We visited the museums. We walked the beaches where the initial landings took place, and so many brave soldiers lost their lives. We walked the land where ravages of the bombings were still visible. And we stood in those marble crosses at the American Normandy Cemetery. The American Normandy Cemetery and Memorial is the site of the first American cemetery established in Europe in World War II on June 8. 2 days after the landings. 2 days. It encompasses 172 acres and honors almost 10,000 U.S. service members, most of whom lost their lives on D-Day. There are several reasons for someone to study war, one of which is to try to understand human behavior, even though I don't know that it's possible, and to see paths to avoid, to not repeat past mistakes, but also to honor the peace that was hard won. So our Normandy D-Day tour was a challenge. That is a very euphemistic word that I can use there. It was a challenge. But I honored the wisdom of Mrs. Rogers to look for the helpers, the other heroes, for they are many. We see many well, maybe not, but there are many, many movies about war and battles, and you see about the heroes in the battles. But we also have the helpers, the other heroes. Now I'd like to tell you about 3 of them today. The first is Andrea de Jong. In 1941, when World War II had been raging in Europe for 2 years, Andrea de Jong was 24 when she walked into the British consulate in Spain. Spain was neutral. She brought with her a Belgian soldier and a Scottish airman she had just guided over the Pyrenees Mountains, on foot, at night, in the winter. She explained that she had built an escape network and had personally guided Allied servicemen from occupied Belgium through Nazi-controlled France, across the Pyrenees Mountains and into Spain. She said that she could do it again, but she needed financial backing. They did not believe her. After all, how could this slight Belgian woman do this? They assumed it was a Nazi trap. So Andrea went back over the Pyrenees and did it again. Andrea had grown up in Brussels, where her mother was a school teacher and raised her with the stories of Edith Cavell. So Edith Cavell had inspired Andrea. So I had to go and look up Edith Cavell. Well, Edith Cavell had been a British nurse during World War I in Belgium, and she treated wounded soldiers. Now get this, she's Brit. She's in Belgium. Belgium is occupied by Germany, okay? She is ministering to the soldiers from both sides. But also, she helped approximately 200 Allied soldiers escape from German-occupied Belgium. And for saving these soldiers, she was arrested, court-martialed under the German military law, and executed. She was a hero, and all of Belgium knew her name, especially Andrea. So in May of 1940, when Andrea was 24, the Germans again marched into Brussels. She immediately knew that she had to help in some way, so she began assisting wounded Belgian soldiers. She found them safe houses, moving them quietly from one place to another. This was a small, quiet start, but she wanted to do more. The men she was hiding could not stay in Belgium. It was not safe. They needed to get out. They needed to get to Great Britain, where they could join the fight again against the Nazis. But to get them back to Britain, she needed to move them through Brussels, through Belgium, through France, to the Spanish border, and over the mountains to neutral Spain. She called this escape route the Comet Line, and it was nearly 1,000 miles long, all through enemy-occupied territory. Every step of the way had the potential of a death sentence, because there were German checkpoints at every major road, and there were Gestapo informants in every city, where rewards were offered for anyone caught helping Allied soldiers. Rewards generous enough to turn neighbor against neighbor. This was what Andrea and her soldiers had to move through. To do this, she recruited a network of ordinary people, more helpers, housewives, farmers, priests, shopkeepers, who agreed to help the men for one night, feed them, and pass them along to the next safe house. She created false identity papers. She memorized routes and checkpoints, learning how to best maneuver through the enemy's territory. When a group of Allied soldiers had made it as far as the French Basque country, at the very south of France, she took them the final stage over the Pyrenees. The crossing took 2 nights on mountain paths, which were steep and unmarked, covered in snow in the winter and treacherous with rain. She crossed in darkness with exhausted airmen and wounded soldiers, men who had been in hiding for months, and made this crossing 33 times. London eventually stopped doubting her and gave her the codename Dee Dee, which means little mother, which she had become to the men she was saving. Over a 3-year period, she safely delivered 118 soldiers and airmen to neutral Spain. Every one of them had passed through hands she had organized, over routes she had mapped, over mountains she crossed with them. The Gestapo knew someone was moving Allied soldiers through their territory and hunted for her for 2 years before they finally caught her in January of 43. An informant had given her up at a farmhouse in France. I often think about that individual. The Nazis interrogated her for weeks. I use that word very euphemistically, interrogate. But she admitted only that she alone had founded and run the escape route. The Gestapo did not believe her. After all, how could this small 26-year-old Belgian woman run the most successful Allied escape network in occupied Europe? But she never betrayed those who aided the Allied fighters. She was then sent to Ravensbrück concentration camp and then to Mauthausen, 2 of the worst camps, chosen for the worst prisoners, where she stayed for a little over 2 years until she was liberated in May of 1945 when she was 28 years old. I think what I was doing at 28. She was called a heroine across 3 countries and 2 continents and survived things we cannot imagine. After the war, she quietly went to Africa. And for the next 30 years, Andrea de Jong worked as a nurse in leper colonies, first in Belgian Congo, then Ethiopia, then Senegal. She cared for people no one else would touch, in places no one else would go, and she did it quietly, just like she led those Allied soldiers safely over the Pyrenees 33 times. She never believed it was extraordinary. When asked why she had given her life to the soldiers, to the sick, to the forgotten, she said that she had always believed that people who had been given much were obliged to give much back. Yes, war brings out the worst and the best in people. Wars do not make a person great, but they do bring out the greatness in good people. And I read these stories with awe, even when my heart aches and breaks at the carnage that humanity can inflict upon itself. And one last inspiring story. This is about Marion, pardon my pronunciation, von Bonsbergen. Won't do that again. A young Dutch woman in Nazi-occupied Holland in World War II. The Nazis invaded Holland in 1940, and in 1942, Marion was a teenager studying social work in Amsterdam. One spring morning while cycling to class, she witnessed Nazi soldiers forcibly removing Jewish children from a children's home. She witnessed the horror of what was happening right in front of her. She knew where the children were being sent. She knew what would happen to them. And she witnessed bystanders turning away as if nothing was wrong. She did not look away. She was moved to act. So she joined the Dutch resistance. At first, her resistance work was small. She forged papers, hid ration cards, delivered messages under groceries. And as the deportations intensified and entire families were forcibly removed from Amsterdam, she began doing more. Because, as she said later, someone had to do it. By 1943, Marion was living in a quiet house in a small village outside of Amsterdam. Ostensibly, she was caring for a Dutch man and his 3 children, while quietly hiding and caring for Jewish children who were being moved out of Nazi-occupied territory. This family lived their days as normally as possible, but beneath the living room floor there was hidden a crawl space, and when vehicles approached, the Jewish children had 2.5 minutes to disappear under that dark space beneath the floor. The children would lie completely silent and still, no matter how long, no matter how frightened. Search after search, the children remained safe, until one day, a Dutch collaborator arrived, alone, hoping to catch the Jewish children emerging from hiding, which he did. When he walked in and saw the children, Marion again did not hesitate. She pulled out a small handgun and with one bullet killed him. Let's just say that the resistance movement came in and removed all traces. We'll leave it at that. Overall, Marion was left to continue her work until the end of the liberation. She was instrumental in saving approximately 150 Jewish children before the liberation in 1945. After the war, she met an American officer. They were married and eventually settled in Vermont, where she worked as a psychoanalyst, helping traumatized children and refugees rebuild their lives. She never called herself a hero. I would. In interviews, she often commented that what she did was not exceptional, that it was simply what became impossible not to do. She said, there were people who behaved criminally and people who dedicated themselves to rescuing others, and a large group in between. She continued, most of us are in that in-between group until the moment when we are not. She was honored as righteous among the nations, an honor bestowed upon non-Jewish individuals who, through self-sacrifice and moral courage, endangered their own lives to rescue Jews from Nazi persecution during the Holocaust. But perhaps the more lasting honor is the children who breathed quietly in the dark, who grew up, who had children of their own, who lived because one young woman on a bicycle chose not to look away. She chose to act one small act at a time. The hero's journey inspires us because it models courage. It shows that transformation is possible. It reminds us to persevere through difficulty. But most of all, I think it offers hope for humanity, that one person can make a difference. Stories of real-life heroes reaffirm the good in the world. Yes, during challenging times, look for the helpers, for they are everywhere. Namaste.